Working remotely and living abroad in a tropical paradise, logging onto your laptop and spending a few hours in a home office each day generating an income is the dream for many people. The term digital nomad is fairly new, I guess, but it is also very widely used as it is a really cool and interesting way to live your life. But it's not all margaritas on the beach. This video is intended to be a bit of a reality check to pop that sort of bubble of the idea of being a digital nomad in your flip-flops on the beach, tapping away on your laptop. And I wanted to give you some of the hard truths of the reality of being a digital nomad. Like I mentioned, I failed as a digital nomad. I arranged for a visa. I moved to a tropical island in southern Thailand. I found a condo for less than $300 per month, right with a beach view. I had a pool and a gym and all that kind of good stuff. I was a short walk away from the beach. It was almost a dream come true until a year later I found that it was pretty unsustainable and in some respects wasn't actually as desirable as I had imagined it would be. If you want to know my story, if you want to hear that story of me failing as a digital nomad, then I'll leave a link in the description to a video I made previously. I'll also leave a link at the end of this video on screen. But in this video, I wanted to talk specifically about some of the hard truths and some of the things that you definitely need to plan for and consider before you move, before you run away and begin your life as a digital nomad. So number one is pretty obvious, and that would be finance. Moving to a new country, potentially switching up your career, finding a new place to live, adapting to your new location and figuring out your lifestyle and what you're going to eat. All of this is going to be time and money consuming. I found that a lot of the little things really started to add up. Rent in a popular spot is going to cost a lot more than usual accommodation, even when you're moving to a country with a lower cost of living than your home country. It's easy to forget about things like deposits on houses and rental vehicles when you first move to a place. When you do move into your new place, you will probably need to buy a dozen things to make your new place livable. You may have carefully checked for a place with a lower cost of living, but it takes time to find the lower costing supermarkets and restaurants. Starting out as a digital nomad financially really can be a death of 1,000 paper cuts. Really think about moving, think about all the costs acquired when moving, think about all the initial setup costs as well. So you're going to need to find a place, you're going to pay a deposit, you're going to need to find a vehicle, pay a deposit that you won't get back to later. You're going to probably have to buy a load of stuff that you weren't expecting. Maybe your desk isn't suitable, maybe you need a better office chair. Maybe you need something for the kitchen that's quite expensive, so there's probably going to be a lot of startup costs up front that you definitely need to bear in mind. You definitely want to have a lot more, as much more as you possibly can than you're expecting to spend. You may find that you're having to pay quite a lot for your visa options to be able to stay long term in the country. So there really are 100, more than 100, there's 101 financial costs that you may or may not be considering. But that is number one, that's the first hard truth, that financially you're probably going to need to be much more financially healthy than you were expecting. So you definitely want to get that in order before you even consider looking to move abroad and start a new life. The second hard truth that's probably going to hit you like a ton of bricks is finding the right type of visa. If you're going to move to a different country and stay there long term, you need to have a good visa. You need to find a good visa option for you. One of the most complicated parts of living in a different country is getting the correct visa. This is going to be complicated even further if you are not only planning to stay, but working in the country also. Long-term visas are often rare and hard to get, requiring large investments of proof of funds to be successfully acquired. Some countries are more welcoming than others towards digital nomads, so this is definitely something that you need to consider long and hard way before you book flights. I do see online that some countries do offer these digital nomad visas, although I'm not entirely sure what they entail. You also need to make sure that you're very careful in the type of business you're operating doesn't require or the work you're doing online doesn't require a work permit or to be on a working visa or anything like that in the country that you're staying in. This is a minefield and could see you get in trouble with immigration police, which is something that you definitely want to avoid. So finding the correct type of visa that'll allow you to live in the country for a long enough period of time that you want to is probably going to be way more challenging than you first imagined, and it's also probably going to be a lot more expensive than you first imagined. Visas probably are one of the more challenging things to overcome when setting out and becoming a digital nomad. Another hard truth about living abroad and potentially working abroad, especially if you're working remotely online, is that it can be very isolating. Living abroad in a foreign country and working on your laptop in your makeshift home office can be extremely isolating. Maybe you don't know the local language and struggle to make friends. Perhaps this also limits the amount of people in your vicinity who you can communicate with. Maybe your online job is based in a different time zone, so you find yourself working all night and sleeping in the daytime. All of these things can make working as a digital nomad isolating and lonely. This is something I can't stress enough. When you're setting up, remember that you're going to be working alone potentially. If you're working online especially, you might find yourself in your, like I said, your home office, working all night and then asleep all day. This is going to make it extremely hard to sort of socialize. You may want your evenings free so you can go out for lunch and meet new people, but perhaps that is the time your work expects you to be at home chained to your laptop. This may not seem like a big deal, but trust me, this gets really, really crushing and deflating, and especially when you're in a foreign country, when you're so far away from your family and friends. It is a real challenge, and it is definitely a hard truth to bear in mind before you set out. You definitely want to be very careful, very vigilant of your schedule, and even plan sort of social breaks for yourself, so you have time in the right periods of time in your country that you're choosing to live, to go out there and have a good work-life balance. As I briefly mentioned in the previous point, another sort of challenge of becoming a digital nomad, another hard truth, is the sort of difficulty of managing multiple time zones. Another thing you seriously need to consider when it comes to remote work is time zones and scheduling your work-life balance, like I sort of mentioned briefly previously. Let's say you are staying in Bali, but your work is run from America or Europe, meaning that you have to work through the night in your new adopted country to meet the time expectations of your work. This may not seem like a big deal, but it will have a massive impact on your life and make it difficult for you to attend social events. Not only that, maybe you're not suited to sort of a nocturnal schedule. I know that I wouldn't be, and even in fact I'd be very concerned about sort of the potential health risk of doing so. You know, we're sort of programmed to kind of sleep in general at night and be up in the day. So swinging that round can have sort of negative health effects, I think, and I've heard online. So it's something else you want to be wary of. You don't want to sort of just jump in there and then, you know, get a great paying job in the States, but you have to stay up all night. Perhaps that's worth it for you, but it's definitely something you need to consider. So yeah, the time zones of having a job in a different country and sort of managing the different time zones is another real hard truth of being a digital nomad. Another challenge, and this isn't just for digital nomads, this is for anyone sort of living or staying abroad, and that would be the challenge of getting the correct healthcare. I guess this isn't such a hard truth, it's just something that I would definitely add to the list of things to consider way before you plan on moving to a different country. Health insurance can be very expensive and may not even cover everything you need it to. For example, if you're planning on staying a long period in Southeast Asia, then you'll probably find yourself using a scooter for transportation. Many travel insurances won't cover motorcycle accidents. So this is actually sort of a nightmare scenario. I've heard people recount a couple of times, especially online, that you know, you have a motorcycle accident only to find your traveler's insurance doesn't cover motorcycle accidents. In fact, traveler insurance is kind of notorious for having sort of small print that you may not have paid for the travel insurance if you had read all the small print, so make sure you do that. But a better option may be to find a local insurance company. I've had really positive experiences with sort of local health insurance companies here in Thailand, meaning that when I've been to hospital, it's been no issue. I've never had anything that wasn't covered by the local, like, comprehensive insurance coverage, but it was difficult to find that. In fact, I wasn't a digital nomad, I was working in a school, so I had help finding the correct health insurance plan. So not only be wary of the sort of traveler health insurance, that probably won't cover you or cover everything you need it to if you're planning on living and working in a different country, but also, you know, it's a challenge and it can be very difficult to find the right plan for yourself from a local sort of insurance company. It's difficult to get your head around health sort of structures, how things work in different parts of the world also. So it is a real challenge. This is something you definitely want to have sort of a decent plan for before you, you know, like I said, before you take that leap and move out there to your new country. The final thing I want to mention, the final hard truth of living the digital nomad lifestyle that I wanted to mention, is actually travel fatigue. Finally, I wanted to mention something that I've noticed in myself, and that is a kind of fatigue of excessive traveling. When I was younger and living abroad was new, the idea of spending 6 months somewhere, then packing up and leaving to somewhere else, living from a backpack, seemed exciting to me. But I have to say, I find the idea less and less appealing. Don't get me wrong, I still love to travel. However, I definitely wouldn't want to be sort of packing my bags, selling all my stuff, and uprooting every 6 months. I would find that absolutely exhausting. I like having a house, I like having a base somewhere, even just somewhere to keep all my things, that it sort of feels relatively safe. So it can actually become really fatiguing. So moving and having to start again over and over again. You're also going to create like social bonds and friendship groups that you'll sort of have to rip apart and move to a new place and then try and make new ones. That can be really challenging. That can be really tiring. You're going to have to pick up new phrases and new languages. So it can all add up. Perhaps when you're younger and you just want to see the world, you know, that's not a concern for you. But once you get a bit older, once you've sort of got a few things and a few friends that you would miss, the idea of moving it too much, or the idea of like sort of, you know, 6 months here, 6 months here, 6 months here, doesn't really sort of appeal to me as much as it used to. It is very tiring. It would be hard to maintain, you know, consistent work over that extended period of time as well, because you know you're going to be tired from travel, and you're also going to have to figure everything out, like Wi-Fi, internet connection, all the things you need for your work in your new country every couple of months. That all sounds exhausting to me now. Definitely something to bear in mind. Perhaps you'd be better off staying for a longer period in a specific country. Maybe you would find that more valuable and less tiring. All right, so those are a few hard truths that I learned, and the hard truths of being a digital nomad. Let me know in the comment section if you can think of any more that you would like to add to that list. I'm sure there's lots and lots and lots. And like I said at the beginning of this video, if you want to know the story of how I failed as a digital nomad, then I'll leave a link to that video right here. So check that out if you're interested in hearing that story.